Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closer Show. As always, Scott Carson, excited to be here with you today. Even more excited to have our good guest who's been called the nose candy of business. In a recent speaker survey, our good buddy Aaron Young had a very, very invigorated and enthusiastic fan in his most recent event at Magnifier Wealth who called him the Dragon. But we're glad to have him here, as always. Aaron Young from Laughlin Associates. If you don't know who he is the CEO there of the company that has been for over 40 years now, been providing entrepreneurs like you and you out there and myself out there with entities and asset creation, asset protection creation, and really helping entrepreneurs with their books to keep them legal and stay out of compliance trouble. And so we're honored, as always, to have him here. We're always honored as well to have Laughlin Associates a sponsor of the Note Closer Show podcast. But first and foremost, Aaron is one of our closest friends, a brother from another mother, and one of the guys that I reach out to when I have questions or need advice, or I would say better than advice, true counsel, because Aaron's done it. And I could not think of a better person to have on today to talk about kind of goal setting in the new year. As this episode comes out in the early part of December, I know many people are reflecting on their 2019, and then I'm like either looking favorably towards the new year, or like, oh crap, where did the year go? And many people want the new year to be different. So I'm excited and honored to have Aaron on here today to talk about kind of that smart goal setting for the new year. But anyway, good morning, Aaron. How's everything going, brother?
It is so good. I look forward to this every month when we get back together. And excuse my voice. I've been, as you know, but they don't know necessarily. I've had a couple of months of pretty much nonstop travel and speaking all over the world. And so I'm super excited. The day that we're recording this, which is middle of November.
Yep.
I just got home last night from seriously 8 weeks of, I think I was home 3 or 4 nights during 8 weeks. And now I'm home for the rest of the year. And so, I mean, with the exception of some time we'll spend at our beach house at the end of December, but I'm home. And I'm like so chilled out. And this topic that you just mentioned, I'm actually really excited about, because this is exactly what I'm in the throes of right now, is reviewing last year and making plans for 2020. So it's a perfectly timed conversation.
Yeah.
I'll let you lead it and I'll just pontificate.
Not a problem. So, many people, especially many entrepreneurs out there, we talk with a variety of entrepreneurs in business or in real estate or note investing, are looking to do something in the new year. And everybody looks towards, New Year's resolutions. And I'm a big proponent that the new year can start any day. Your new year can start today. You don't have to wait till January 1st to go to the gym to start working out. You can start doing those actions today. You don't have to wait to make offers to banks for deals come January 2nd. You can do it starting today. But the thing I want people to focus is, I think a lot of people, especially those that are kind of getting new into a business, into a new venture, maybe get a little overwhelmed. That shiny object syndrome, and what should I focus on? They're kind of turning a couple of different ways. And I think the more that we can narrow it down to 2 or 3 specific targetable, measurable goals for them, as we call SMART goals, the better off they're going to be in the long run. It doesn't mean those goals can't change throughout the year, but let's look at a couple things, or talk about a couple things that most people, especially from your experience with you buying and bringing companies up and doing other things, what are some of the key things that you're looking at for the last year's numbers or looking towards the next year, Aaron?
So fundamentally, okay, so just to set the stage for the people listening. So my life's work has been and you mentioned Laughlin, over 40 years. We're in our 49th year, right? So we're coming up on our 49th birthday. And then for 36 years, I've been starting or buying companies. And we've done that many, many times. And I'm actually in acquisition mode right now. I've got 2 companies that I'm looking at buying in the first quarter. So what I do, since I don't really have a job inside of any of these companies, we call me CEO, but in reality, I'm the chairman more than the CEO. So what I get measured on are four things. I get measured on top line revenue, like how much were we able to sell? Bottom line profit, how efficient were we with the money we brought in? Client retention, client satisfaction and retention, and employee satisfaction, right? So that's what I'm looking at. How much are we selling? How much are we keeping? Are we keeping our clients? Are we keeping our employees? To me, though, for the leader, those are the most important things. Why? Well, for one thing, let's start at the number 4, which is client or employee retention, employee satisfaction. Employees, like customers, are so much more long-term value and so much easier. It's so much easier to keep them than to replace them, right? If you can take good care of your employees or good care of your clients so they stay with you over the long haul, that's much less expensive than having to go out and find people over and over and over and over again. So then the question becomes, well, at some point they've purchased what I have, right? How do I keep them? Now, maybe I'm providing a service so we can keep them there, but our menu may be exhausted, which is part of why we go out and we look for other companies to own or other affiliates to work with that are still within the scope of the service we're providing. So in other words, if I'm helping you form your corporation or help with your corporate compliance, your minutes, your resolutions, stock ledger, your minute book stuff, if I'm doing that, it's still kind of in our wheelhouse to offer bookkeeping services or payroll services or merchant processing services. Those still fit. If I started offering piano tuning, or recipes for fish and chips, those would not fit, right? I see a lot of people do that, which I think kills your list. They have a big list and they start selling out and promoting stuff to their customers that have nothing to do with the conversation the customer thought they were having with you and your company. So we've got to be very protective, but we can offer either through acquisition of other companies or affiliate relationships, things that make sense to come from me to you, right? So one of the things I'm constantly looking at is what else do the customers want and how can we get it for them? And if possible, how can we make a little sliver of money if we're doing it through somebody else? It's one of the reasons I love working with you, because we've introduced clients to you and you've introduced tons of clients to me, that it all makes sense. We're trying to build their wealth. So I'm going to help protect it. You're going to help show them how to have more of it. And that conversation makes sense. So one of the big things is be super clear on what do your clients want and how do you give it to them? How do you keep your employees happy so they stay with you? Those are two big things that I'm thinking about a lot right now. Mm-hmm. The other things, how much money do we make and how efficient were we with it, are things every single solitary business owner, if you're not doing it, you're not really in business. You might be making money, but you're not treating your business like anything that's going to last beyond right now. You have to be able to figure out where's the money coming from, how do we do more of that, and how do we more efficiently execute our business, pay our employees, do our travel, whatever. So there's something left over at the end of the year that you can either take or you can reinvest. Mm-hmm. So I just put a whole bunch of stuff out there. We can go deep on any and all of those things.
Well, I think let's start with the profit stuff and looking at your numbers, because I think it's a big thing. Right. And we'll come back to something else too about not wanting to bastardize our lists as well too.
Sure.
So I think the biggest thing is we're constantly looking at sales. We're looking at, okay, what's coming in if we're doing our educational classes, our trainings, what's coming, are we up, are we down? I'm looking back, okay, what were those referral sources? Was it speaking at Magnify Your Wealth? Was it speaking at real estate clubs? Was it the podcast? And that's the thing that we always constantly look at, is you have to know where your sales are coming from. If you're buying notes, let's say, are you buying from direct source as your main source? Are you buying from the condors? Are you buying direct from banks? Looking to see where your sources or your referral network coming from. And that's a great way, because let's face it, I'm a big believer that 80% of sales comes from about 20% of your activities, right? Sometimes it's 10% of your activities, depending on a focus chart. But looking at that thing, because you said something really good there, looking at what your sales are and deciding, hey, do we need to reinvest that or take some of that as a profit? And that's the thing you have to look at is, okay, if I'm buying these deals, am I using that money to go back in and reinvest in the properties? Am I using it to buy more assets? Or I'm looking to put it in my retirement account? Am I looking at to invest back in going to a different workshop or a mastermind or, an inner circle aspect of things? You have to, first and foremost, you got to be making profit. That's the first thing, right?
Yeah. Well, there's got to be cash flow at least. I mean, let's look at Amazon, right? The big juggernaut, right? They're buying up everything. He's now the wealthiest man in the world. But they only got into the black 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
For as long as they've been around. They've been around for 25 years at least.
Mm-hmm.
And they only barely got in the black, but they had a lot of cash flow, right? But I think I'm not trying to debate your point, because your point is right. We have to have more money than we need to survive in order to go do something else, to buy a list, to go on a trip, to do an affiliate deal, you've got to figure out where the money's coming from, and you've got to figure out how to, so many people spin their wheels doing things that are not valuable. And part of the reason they do it is because they don't have a handle on what is actually valuable. Let me tell you one thing I learned early in my career. So this is going clear back to the 80s. Just because you're getting customers doesn't mean they're the right customers, right? Just because you're making sales doesn't mean they're the right sales that you should be making. As a matter of fact, I tell my team at Laughlin all the time, if we're unbelievably good at selling corporations and LLCs, we'll go right out of business because there's no money in it. There's no profit in it. It's a commodity business. You can go directly to your Secretary of State. You can go to LegalZoom. You can go to Rocket Lawyer. You can go to anybody that's not a law firm doing it. We're all within $10 or $20 of each other because there's just no margin in it. You have to have other things you can provide that have greater margin so that you actually have money to pay employees. If you're selling things at a commodity level, you're probably, you'll sell yourself right out of business, and so people don't always understand that. And folks, let me just tell you, if you're a small business owner, odds are you're not regularly looking at your balance sheet, your statement of cash flow, or your profit and loss. And if you even have a P&L, odds are you look at the top and the bottom. First thing about profit and loss statement, it's a fantasy document. It's not a statement of fact. You can create the chart of accounts and the way you put things in, and depending on if you're on cash or accrual basis or whatever, your bottom line can look like you have 150,000 cash. We made $150,000 last month, but you're negative 20 grand in your bank account. So if all you do is look at the top and the bottom, you're always going to be looking at confusing data. Everything that's in the middle, all those line items in the middle, is where the money is. And that's where you need to figure out, how do we get our receivables a little quicker? How do we do our payables a little slower? How can we reduce our marketing spend by 2%, but get a 3% improvement in our sales? You want to be looking at how can I jigger with those numbers in the middle to end up with a better result? But most people have no concept of what all the lines are in the middle. And so it's like that story from Think and Grow Rich about the guy that goes out and he finds gold and he digs gold for a little bit, and then the thing runs out. He was able to make money, but he didn't really understand why, right? But then he abandons the claim, sells all the equipment to somebody, and the guy that gets it from him goes and gets an engineer and says, what happened? Why'd they run out of gold? And they said, oh, well, they went right through the vein. Go back, turn, and you'll find the vein again. Well, the vein of gold is in all those lines on your P&L. And most people don't understand it. So part of what we do when we're goal setting is we're going back and evaluating, what did we spend on marketing? What individual marketing ideas worked? What did we do from new salespeople? What training did we give them? Why did that person seem to have greater sales than these other people? What did we do different from the clients that paid us the most? Did we have a lot of outreach to them, a little outreach? What did we say? What did we send them? You get into the line items, and that's where you find the gold. So.
Amen to that. Well, it's the same thing. We totally agree to that. We're looking at where our servicing costs are at for what we do. What are those costs per asset? Can we reduce that? Are there things that we can do with a direct letter campaign out to our borrowers, get them to expedite, to get them back on track when we buy assets faster, to speed up? There's all those little dials, I like to say. It's like adjusting the dials to optimize your business. If you're buying an apartment complex, the first thing that many people will look at is your management costs. Or is there ways to add revenue into it? Do we need to add a laundromat? Do we need to add some vending machines? Do we need to, put up individual meters for the utilities and different things like that? There's a whole variety of different things that to do that, but you've got to constantly looking at the numbers and looking at aspects and seeing that there. Now, is there anything you want to add to that before we kind of talk back? Nope, you're good there. I think
no, keep going. No, you know me, I'll ramble all over the place anyway. Lots of things going on here, not necessarily in an organized fashion.
Right. One of the things, too, that you talked about earlier on, especially if they're looking to drive revenue, is finding affiliate partnerships or joint venture partners. I'm not talking about joint venture partners in part of people funding deals. I'm talking to people that align up in your co-marketing. Like you and I do a lot of co-marketing together. I promote your events. You're promoting my events. I speak at your events. You speak at my events. I refer people to you. You refer people to me. The reason it works so well is the fact is that, one, I don't take my list and just pimp it out to everybody. I get a lot of people.
Bastardize it.
Yeah, bastardize it. I get a lot of people that come to me and say, hey, Scott, let's do a list swap. I'll give you 50,000 of my contacts. You give me 50,000 of yours and we'll swap. And that never works out well. People are getting now solicited.
Because your clients will stop opening your emails.
Amen. They'll stop opening because they don't find value in what you do. And I see this being a big mistake a lot of entrepreneurs are doing is they're just promoting everybody and their dog's product. There's somebody that I've spoken to their events before and, I've been, and then I see an email from them advertising something brand new, something new training, something the best, greatest thing since sliced bread every week, knowing that he's getting a affiliate split, but the product doesn't make any sense. And we see this happen a lot in real estate with cross joint ventures and stuff like that. And it might be a quick buck, but you lose your list in the long run.
Yeah, I just, I have to say, it's a curious thing to me because two recent experiences. One was just somebody that was at my Magnify Your Wealth event who their business is building email lists for sale, right? So they're doing stuff out there to grab get you interested in something really simple, and they build up these lists and they sell the lists. And he was explaining to me how much work there is in that, and no wonder, because the list doesn't really it's not based on trust. It's right, not based on trust. So there's that. So I was listening to him explain to me about his business, and it just made me very curious about how it's got to be kind of a maybe even a one and done. We go do something, we get 2% response, 98% don't like it. Maybe 20% opt out of the list, right? So that's an interesting business model that I don't understand. The other thing is I just spoke at and have been invited to go back in 2020 to speak at an event that's almost all, as a matter of fact, you would actually like this event, Scott. I'll tell you about it offline. But it's almost all affiliate marketers. So they all are people who've built significant lists, but this particular event is all about how can we drive traffic to each other. It's the exact same thing we're talking about that I don't want to do and you don't want to do unless it's very, very targeted. And yet everybody there was saying, I'm looking for lists of this size to blah, blah, blah. And I thought, there's obviously a deeper level, a different level of marketing that we don't use that exists. And I need to find out about it. But my fundamental, my gut reaction to it is, I don't like it. I like long relationships based on trust. And I really want the clients, when they see something with my name on it, I'm hopeful that we'll have a very large open rate because they know if I'm writing to them, it's part of the relevant conversation that they agreed to when they became a client or when they opted into my list or started listening to the podcast. So I guess what I'm trying to say to your listeners, and I'm trying to wrestle with myself, is one, are we doing things in integrity so that we keep an honest and open and progressive relationship with those people on our list that we're marketing to? Two, and everybody listen to this, are there things that we just don't currently understand that might still be valuable as long as we learn about them and then we stay in integrity if we decide to use them? Because Scott, how much of a revelation was it for you when you first found out you could buy non-performing notes?
Oh, it was a huge revelation.
So you didn't know about it before, and you might have challenged the value or the intelligence of going into that business until you learned something. How many people, the first time you did a fix and flip and you made money, were like me, how the heck did I not know about this before? So we don't want to discount new things, but we do want to be very judicious in how we engage in new activities so that we don't spoil all the work we've done up until now.
And that's the thing is, I think you have to look at what's going on. I mean, everybody has aha moments. You know, one of the first deals I did, you know, we turned $100. I turned $100 into 40 grand, you know, and that was a pretty interesting wholesale deal. Pretty good return on investment there for me over 30 days.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is people have to look at, you know, that's if you're looking for something new, there's great things out there, there's great revelations out there, but you've also got to look at what's working in today's market. I think it's the most important thing. I see a lot of people that are promoting something from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or the training, similar training, and it hasn't changed. And that's not a revelation. The revelation is, oh, I just spent something on that doesn't work in my market or doesn't work in my time frame.
Or the technology no longer works.
Exactly. It's outdated marketing.
Yeah, they've changed the rules. And so that somebody still that's behind the times will buy it, but really just wasted money.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's people are often looking for a quick fix. My experience is there are no quick fixes. You can shorten your learning curve by following mentors, people who've actually been down the road ahead of you. Which is something you're great at, Scott, and something I strive to be. But
you're a great mentor, Aaron.
There's no, thank you. There's no I shouldn't say no shortcut. There's no excuse not excuse. There's no replacement for experience, for educating yourself. Was it Jim Rohn or Zig Ziglar? Which one was it that said, a formal education will make you a living and self-education will make you a fortune.
Yeah.
And the way to make real wealth is to be constantly learning about new things. And then, as Steve Jobs talked about in that one great address he did at Stanford University, the only time he ever spoke at a commencement, and he was already very sick with cancer. And he talked about successful entrepreneurship is about connecting dots, not about following a line, but about connecting a bunch of random dots and putting them together in a way that nobody else thought to do it. That's where you make money. But the only way you do that is by being well educated on lots of things. So when you go and say, oh, I can sign up for this $9.99 course and it's going to change my life forever, I would say take the $9.99 course and then pull out the gold nuggets. Don't assume that this is the actual 10 commandments coming down from the mountain with Moses. Not the fact, just some good information. And then apply those dots to figure out how to make it work in your world.
Mm-hmm. No truer words are spoken. It's all about, as I say, the nuggets. You're going to pull nuggets out of something. When I teach a workshop or if I go and attend something, my biggest goal is to walk out of wherever I'm at, whether it's going to Magnify Your Wealth or going to Traffic and Conversion Summit in San Diego, or even I spoke this last week in Atlanta at a RIA club, and I actually took something away from there. I'm always trying to sit there and be present in what's going on so I can have a better feel for the audience or better feel for the event or better feel for who's next to me. You never know who you're sitting next to. And if I can take a nugget out of there, it makes my time even much more valuable versus walking to an event thinking that I know everything. And that's not, you're not going to get ahead in life. You're not going to hit your goals that you want to accomplish if you think you know everything and you're staying stagnant, especially leading into the new year. You've constantly got to be helping that self-education, as you mentioned. A book education will make you wealthy, but self-education makes you rich for sure, definitely.
Yeah, it's really true. And particularly right now as we look into 2020. Now, I'm not going to give any details on it, but not yet. But we will talk about this on a later show.
Yep.
But 2020, I believe, might be the biggest year of my career so far, because I've got some really big things happening this coming year, that are in process now and are going to hit. And I think we're going to be able to affect a lot more people. We're going to make a lot more money. I'm quite convinced 2020 is going to be a huge year for the things that I'm working on. But I also believe part of the reason I'm doing the things that I'm doing right now is anticipation of what I believe is coming with a recession. I believe we're not very far away from another recession. I believe rates will go up. We are already seeing constriction of money on a bank level, maybe not for mortgage notes, but for other sorts of lending. The cost to the bank, the money cost to the bank is going up, which is making the banks have to rethink, how do we make our margins, which they can't keep everything low and have their rates going up. So there's got to be some sort of parity in what they're paying versus what they're charging for the use of money. So as we look into 2020, a big part of me is thinking, okay, what happens if a bunch of small business owners go out of business or go way down in revenue in 2021, right? What am I doing now? Well, I've still got some runway. What am I doing to maybe get into more cash, have a little bit more of a buffer, have some rainy day money put away? What other assets do I have that I can use so that if we go into we're going to go, we're already overdue for a recession.
Yep.
So every cycle has an up and a down. We've been up for way longer than normal and in a record growth, but we're going to go down. So when that happens, there will be people who will be dumping stuff, right? We all saw that happen in 08, 9, 10, where all these short sales happened, all these foreclosures happened, all this stuff. And in your world, what happened was for those that had money, all those foreclosures meant I can buy stuff at a fraction of the price from a year or two ago.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come in and buy things at 40 cents on the dollar from 2 years ago. So when we go into fire sale mode, folks, are you selling in the fire sale or are you buying? I'm trying to be in a good position to buy. I admire Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway. They have $122 billion in cash sitting on the sidelines waiting for the recession. So as we look at our goals right now in a peak time, a boom time, I would be looking out a year from now and saying, if we go into a recession, am I organized to be a receiver of the transfer of wealth, or am I going to be dumping stuff because I'm overextended?
Mm-hmm.
You know, am I going to be a loser or a winner in the next downturn in the cycle?
That's the truth. It's all about preparing. I mean, and I've seen this being involved in different real estate masterminds where a lot of people are still doing business, you know, trying to go out and build rehab and increase the value of their properties and, you know, expecting and planning on getting the highest value price when that's never the case, especially in a downturn. You've got to be prepared. Hey, a 10, 20% off that highest price if you had to move it real fast, which a lot of people may have to move it. I've got a good friend, Brett Garrett, down in Fort Myers, Florida. Amazing realtor. I think you've met him before we've been at Cape Coral for the mastermind before, but he's been down there for years. He has sold all of his investment properties at peak prices, and he's holding on to million plus half in cash just for the opportunities when things do hit the fan here in the next 6 to 12 months. And so he's really being smart about what he's doing, because he sees that. He's been through a couple cycles down in South Florida, and those swing a little bit harder than they do here in Austin or Texas or some of the other areas out there too. So are you preparing for that? Are you looking at, hey, what happens if that? Are you clearing things off your books so that you've got that liquidity available to hold on to, or be in a receivership position like you mentioned?
Yeah, whether you're writing it out or you're buying.
Mm-hmm.
But we're doing the same thing. We're putting in our what in our world is a lot of money on the sideline. We're not doing big marketing campaigns right now. We're not buying stuff. We had an opportunity to buy the building that the Laughlin office is housed in Reno. And we looked at it and just said, we're at the very top of the market, and we've already sort of, we've maxed out that building. So instead of buying it because it's convenient, why don't we wait and we'll buy something bigger for less money in a year or so. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and a guy did buy the building, and he wanted to know what he could do so we would sign a longer term lease. And I said, well, we have still 3 years left on our lease, and there's nothing you can do for me right now.
Do you want to reduce the lease?
Yeah. He actually wanted to know, why didn't you buy the building?
Uh-huh.
Because he's buying it as an investment. He lives out of state. I said, well, because I think you're at the top of the market. It was, you know, so as somebody in the real estate game, you guys, you want to make sure, you know, how secure are the people that are renting from you or leasing from you? I've been watching that a lot. And people that are extended, they'll probably stay in. They have to have a place to live or a place to operate from, or from which to operate. But I'm trying to go back to high school English, not put a preposition in there. But they'll need a place from which to operate. So that's okay. But I tell you what, owners are going to lose money if they're buying now. I really believe that.
Yeah, I've got a buddy that's doing a lot of purchasing and converting them to Airbnbs and things like that. And I'm like, okay, you're getting more cash flow than you would with a traditional rent, which is great, but you're still buying a lot of stuff at the top of the market. And his thing is, well, hey, if you think real estate's expensive now, wait 5 years. I'm like, okay, I can see the logic to that, but I also think, you know, you might need to be a little bit more surgical in what you're buying. And
the house that I'm in right now, was valued at about $1.5 million in 07. I bought it for $599, right? During the low spot.
Mm-hmm.
It's now back up over $1 million again. If you want to wait, if you want to see how expensive real estate is in 5 years, I don't know, look back 7 or 8 or 9 years and see how much things were selling for then compared to what they've sold during the elapsed time. Now the market's gone up and we're at the top again and it's softening again.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at, so you know I raise horses. I went and looked at 100 acres with a phenomenal barn situation, a huge giant arena, 2 houses, phenomenal views, absolutely dream kind of a property. And they've come off of it $650,000 in the last year. And nobody's buying it. And it's not because it's not a great piece of property with a great bunch of improvements, but it's because it takes a very special buyer. It's it's a little far out of town, not way far. You're only 15 minutes from a Costco, but it's out of Portland. It's away from the airport. It's out in wine country. That kind of thing, I promise, a year from now is going to be cheaper than it is today.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be cheaper than it is today. So if you're only talking about $250,000, 2,000 square foot, 4-bedroom, 3.5 bathroom places in a little neighborhood, sure, those things are always going to be selling. But a lot of stuff, you're going to be able to buy it cheaper in a few months.
Yeah,
exactly. Sit tight and be a buyer. There will be trillions of dollars that will transfer hands in the next recession. Do you want to be receiving or dumping? And I want to be buying. That's going to be a garage sale with gold bars in it, man.
Well, you took the words exactly out of my mouth. The last recession, became a garage sale economy where the run up, people were refinancing, pulling equity of their houses, going buying the boats, the second cars, the jet skis.
Oh yeah, all their toys.
All their toys. And then it went south. People lost their jobs, and then people were selling their toys at a fraction of what they paid for them just to pay rent, pay the mortgage. We saw it everywhere here in Austin and other parts of the country.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. So when I start seeing those things, pull equity out, pull this out, I'm like, hang on a second. Deja vu all over again. Is history?
Yeah, there it is again. And folks forget. People forget. I know we're probably getting low on time, but my dad said to me a month or two ago, he said, I just worry about my grandkids, my great grandkids. And he's going to be 80 here in a couple months. And he just so worried. He said, I just don't remember a time in history that was this bad. Mm-hmm. It's just so hard. I worry so much. And I'm like, dude, first of all, let's jump back before you were born to when we had a civil war where the country we lost more of our citizens to war than all the wars combined since then. Okay, that was pretty bad. Remember we had slavery at that time. That was pretty bad. Remember when women were being put in jail at the beginning of the 20th century for wanting to vote, right? What about the 2 world wars we fought? What about the actual atomic bombs that were dropped, right? This is a great time. This is a phenomenal time to be alive. Are you kidding? You can, with this little device right here, you can be in business. You can make hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars with this little thing that's in your pocket. You can talk to everybody in the world for basically free over Zoom.
Yep.
Or Facebook Live. I mean, give me a break. We're in a great time, but there's always going to be up and down times. There's always going to be cycles. Just get prepared. Don't think because you're at the top of the market, people that try to sell stock or sell real estate or whatever at the top of the market always lose their butts every time. You should be selling all the way up. Don't be greedy. Don't be greedy. At this time of the year, when you're setting goals and you're looking forward, don't try to be greedy. Say, how do I survive and thrive and be prepared for the times when others will be suffering. If you're listening to this show, odds are you're already ahead of the game because you're paying attention. So just let's be a little glasses getting to be half empty, right? And say, the boom is about done. Now you can have a second boom as the garage sale buyer who's walking in there with $1,000 in their pocket, cash, and buying up every good thing that those poor people who've put out the tables in the front yard are having to dump, right? Be the buyer, be prepared, and come out of this thing 2 or 3 years from now much wealthier than you are today.
That's the truth. No, that's such a good way, because that's the thing when it comes down to everything. Take action. You've got to be willing to take action, but also just make sure you're doing the right things. Make sure you look at things. Don't be jumping ahead pretending like tomorrow is going to be like yesterday. You've got to take a look and know how the markets are changing and keeping an eye. And that's what comes from networking and surrounding yourself with great people, peers. As our buddy Greg Reed likes to quote Charlie Tremendous Jones, in 5 years you'll be the same person for the books that you've read and the people that you've met.
Yeah. If you're still going to be you, but you're not going to stay flat. You're going to go down. Your values, your knowledge, value, capacity will decrease or increase. It's going to decrease if you do nothing. Spend your time watching TV, bitching about stuff on the news, worrying about the reds and the blues in politics, or you can feed your brain through great conversations and great reading. And reading these days could also be things like TED Talks and so on. Yeah. But you have a choice. You can become greater than you are now, smarter, more capable, or you can become a relic. It's up to you. You'll still be a nice person. You'll still have friends. You'll still have your buddies at church or at the golf club or at the bar. You'll still coach Little League or basketball, but you're going to become a relic of the past, or you're going to be somebody who's benefiting from the new stuff in the future. And these are all things to be looking at right now. How will you participate in the game of 2020 and 2021? That's what it is. And I'm glad you want to talk about that, because as I said, we're deep in the middle of it right now. We're doing due diligence on these companies that we're buying. We're looking at new affiliates. I'm speaking all over the freaking place in 2020. I'm going to be at the Oxford Entrepreneur Society at Oxford University, the largest, oldest entrepreneur group in Europe. Now, that's an opportunity. What am I going to do with that? Am I going to do the same old, or am I going to say, how can I get the greatest value from this hour that I get in front of this phenomenal group of people in a different market? I'm going to be in the Middle East. I have 5 speeches booked in the Middle East.
That's exciting.
It's a little tour. That's a completely different world than Portland, Oregon, right? Am I going to learn some things about that economy, about what drives those people? Am I going to get better at my game, or am I going to try to say, oh, I already know it all? Because I'll end up losing the opportunity. I'll screw it up. Or I can learn and I can really maximize the opportunity. Folks, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Get prepared for what's coming. Because what you knew yesterday is useful context, it's useful information, but it will not be what makes you thrive over the next several years.
Amen to that. Amen to that. You heard it here, guys and gals out in Nut Nation out there. Take advantage, learn, start honing those skills so you can take advantage of the next wave, and really prepare yourself for an abundance and how to magnify your wealth in 2020 out there for everybody.
Nice one.
You like that? Magnifyyourwealth.com, everybody.
Coming up the end of April, beginning of May.
Great way to book it now so that you're prepared. If you ever
Magnifyyourwealth.com.
Magnifyyourwealth.com, everybody. Good stuff there.
As long as you're going to bring it up, I'll say it.
Oh, you did good. Perfect there. So, but we are running out of time here. Aaron, I want to say thank you, especially for joining us after your most recent event there in San Diego. I know it takes a lot out of you, but you're energized. Always just bring value here. And once again, thanks so much for being on the Note Close Show today, buddy.
Every opportunity to be with you, Scott, is something I'm always going to make work.
Hey, same here, brother. Thanks, man. We'll see you later.
Thanks.
All right, guys and gals, take some of what Aaron shared here today in this episode. Check out magnifyyourwealth.com as well, and be prepared to take advantage of the trends. Look at what you're doing. Look at what you've done this last year. I know I've got to adjust some things that I've done this year and get back a little bit more focused on some things in the new year, because it's never too late to make that change. It's never too late to take that right turn and find that vein of gold out there. So go out, make something happen, everybody, and we'll see you all at the top, everybody. Bye.